Welcome to Coffey Talk, real stories from real people. I'm your host, Kate Coffey Bacon, and every Monday we'll sit down for honest conversations about successes, failures, and the lessons we learn from both. So grab your coffee, settle in, and let's talk. Welcome back to Coffey Talk. Today, I'm joined by someone who knows what it means to reinvent herself more than once, Leanne Paul. Leanne began her career in social work. This is so very interesting to me. Transitioned into IT in the late 90s, took time away to raise her kids. Hats off to you. And then returned to the workforce. And she didn't just return. She rebuilt and advanced on her own terms. Her story is about change, confidence, and the power of creating your own opportunities instead of waiting for them to appear. Welcome to Coffey Talk, Leanne.
Thanks so much.
Sure. Leanne, let's start with your story. So take us back to those early days, that first big career transition from social work into technology. How did you know it was time to make a change?
Well, I knew that I wasn't happy with what I was doing. So I got a degree in psychology, went right on to graduate school. That was in, I think, 92. I graduated from college, went right to graduate school to get a master's in social work because the job market wasn't great at the time. And so I just thought, well, this is what I want to do. I'm just going to go and get that master's degree. To make any money in that field, you at least have to have a master's. So I did that and then came out of there, and my first job out was like a psychiatric emergency service working overnights, and it was rough. And I had a couple other kind of job hopped for the next couple of years, and I realized I was just blessed with way too much empathy. Like I just brought that home with me every night. I was working with a lot of really troubled kids and broken family situations, and I just felt like it affected me mentally. It affected my relationships. Like I couldn't do it. So, my hat goes off to people who can do it because it's so important. But for myself, I just got buried in it. And so I thought, now what, right? I spent all this money getting a master's degree. I got all these school loans. I was engaged to be married. And I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And I went to a career counselor who kind of helped me sort some things out. And one of the things I really liked doing was playing around with computers. So there's not a lot of IT staff in social services. Like usually you don't even have an internal IT person. So I was just the one who would be like, oh yeah, I'll try to figure that out. Oh yeah, I'll get on the phone with, corporate IT and try to figure out how to get this to work. And so that's why I thought, well, why not? I kind of like doing this and I'll give it a try. So I had never thought about a career in IT. I was not good at math in school. And so I never considered any kind of engineering or technology degree. And I thought later, like, well, geez, nobody ever said to me, hey, you can be like not great at math and you can still do something in one of those fields. Because I can tell you that in over 20 years of IT, I've never had to use calculus, right? So I could have gone that route, but nobody ever said to me, hey, consider something different, right? Even though you're not good at math, you can do this. So I did go back to school. I got a certificate program in client server development because I did think I needed some credential, because you can't just walk into an IT company and be like, hey, I have a degree in social work. Now I'd like to do computers. So that 6-month certificate program helped me get the credentials that I needed to get in somewhere. And the contacts that I met in that class helped me get my first job.
And then your life took another turn, right? You decided to stay home with your kids. Same. I did the same thing.
Yeah.
What was that experience like, knowing that you eventually wanted to go back to return to work, right? So what was that experience like, not turning away, but pivoting to stay home with your kids? What was that like for you?
Well, I was worried about it because I had only really been working in IT for like 3 years when I decided to stay home. So I was concerned that, geez, I just made the switch and now I'm leaving again. And it was unexpected. I never thought I would do it. My oldest son was born 6 weeks early in the winter. And the doctors said to me, best if he didn't go to daycare right away because of concerns about, RSV. And they scare the heck out of you, with possibilities. So I ended up decided to stay home for 6 months. And then at the end of that 6 months, I just felt like wow, this is working really well having me at home. We were crunching some numbers. We were like, going to daycare. It's we're going to be right on the edge anyway. And then we just thought, well, if I'm going to be home, might as well have another one. We wanted 2 kids, so we'll just do that. So the kids are like 20 months apart, and yeah, I ended up home for 5 years. But it was not easy. I mean, mentally for me, I didn't like not kind of having my own money and feeling like I wasn't contributing financially. And my husband was always like, "It's our money. It's not, my money." But I know I was raised by a single mom who worked all the time, and I just never envisioned myself not having a job. But at the same time, I absolutely loved it. I loved being home with them. I loved that weren't trying to rush out the door going to daycare every morning, which is so hard for people. I know I had friends who were doing it. My sister was doing it. And I feel like, I just felt so lucky at the time that I didn't have to do that. It was great being home with them.
Yeah, I did a similar I had a similar path. I mean, I did lots of I have a degree in marketing. I'm a marketer now. I'm kind of one of those rare kind of birds that I'm actually doing what I went to school to do. But in the interim, I own my own business for 10 years. Coffee Talk listeners have heard me say I was a wedding photographer, and I
Right.
got into shooting weddings because I thought, oh, I'll just, maybe be gone a couple weekends a year, and ended up shooting, 50 plus weddings a year and being gone all the time. And that was a pivotal moment for me. But I got into it initially because I didn't want to leave my kids. And I
Mm,
thought, we can have a trade off. My kid's dad and I can have a trade off with, I'm home with them in the week. And so I did a very similar thing. And then when I walked away from my career, because was still missing all the games, all the parties, all the things, all the fun things with my kids. I walked away and went, back into traditional marketing, but didn't dive into my career head first, like hard dive in until my kids were almost gone.
yeah.
I'm an empty nester now, and I work a lot and I love the work that I do. So I completely understand that. And coming back into work after owning my own business and translating the work that I did into a resume, right, can be a challenge because I'm like, I own my own business. I did it all. Hire me. And they're like, well,
Mm,
you have experience, but you don't have experience. So then there's that.
right.
So that when I read that part of your story where you just made things happen for yourself, that was what made me so curious to, invite you to come on to Coffee Talk today. So when you did come back to work, you
Mhm.
didn't just return, you took very intentional steps to advance your career, to build momentum. What was driving you in that season? What were your goals for yourself?
I mean, initially my goal was just to go back and catch up because 5 years in IT, I mean, there's a lot that happens in that 5 years, and I knew I was behind. Luckily, and I'd done some little like part-time like I sold Pampered Chef while I was home with the kids, and I worked stocking Legos and at retail stores, and I worked at a kids clothing store. So I did keep my hand in the working world a little bit, but I didn't do anything with IT. I didn't do not a thing. So I came back and it was like, now I got to remember how to do this stuff. And I did go back to the same company that I had worked at before I had my kids. They actually hired me back part-time. I was working 9 to 3 so that I could get home when the kids got home from school. And I had to just dive in. And my only goal at that time was to catch up. And that was for a good few years and to just keep my head above water because then I was juggling, right? Then I was juggling the work and the kids. And at the time I was doing a lot of support work for customers. So, what happens with that is you're supposed to leave at 3 o'clock, but you get that support call at
Yeah.
2:30, right? I can remember so many days like jumping in the car and speeding home to meet the school bus. And my husband was working kind of locally, so he helped, but I felt like that was my responsibility, right? I was the one who was supposed to be home at 3:30 or whatever to get that bus, and it was stressful. It was quite stressful to do. I went back full time. I think the kids they were like 12 and 13, maybe 13, 14, somewhere
Mhm.
around there. And I felt like they could come home and be by themselves after school. And my husband would stop in and make sure they were not doing anything they shouldn't be doing. So I went back full time at that point and continued to juggle. But I was thinking about advancement at that point. And a position became available at our company. And I did go and ask, hey, I'd like to do this. And I was told, no, I don't think you're ready for that.
Mhm.
It was like a more of a management position, and I would kind of be a manager over people I was working with at the time. And remember my boss said, yeah, I don't know that, that's something that you're going to like doing.
Oh,
And in
wow.
my head, I was like, well, I think I would. I think I could do that, but they didn't feel I was ready for it. So then I decided I think might have been even a year after that, to leave and do something different. I went to work I was working for a partner at the time, and I went to work on the end user side because I figured, why not get that experience, get that under my belt? It'll make me a better consultant. And I did that for a few years. And then when I looked to go back to the partner side of things, I intentionally looked for a larger partner that would have more opportunities for growth. Because at that
Okay.
point, my kids were in high school. Like, I think my oldest was a senior at that point, and I just thought, okay, I'm in a position now where I can really focus on work. I want to advance myself. So that's when I looked for a job with Art. I looked at Archer Point. I had a friend who was working there at the time, and she had been calling me saying, "Hey, when are you coming to Archer Point?" And I said, "Yeah, I think it's the time for me." And it was a larger partner, so there were more opportunities for me there.
Yeah, so you said it a minute ago. You said that technology changes so much. 5 years away, even 6 months away, things change. Things change so quickly. So what were you in that 5 kind of year break of
Mhm.
reprioritization? What were you doing to update your knowledge to stay current? Were you reading? Were you doing anything during that time to stay current on changes in technology?
I did keep in touch with some people at the company that I worked for before I had the kids. I kept in touch with them as far as kind of what was going on generally in the world of business, at the time, Navision.
Yeah.
um, but no, I didn't really, I would say technically, like for technical skills, I didn't do a lot. I really
Yeah.
didn't. And I even considered going back to social work, but in a different area. I did look at that. I thought, well, maybe there's a different part of that I should explore. And I was going to go into like psych testing, something that was a little less one-on-one therapy, a little
Yeah.
more, give tests, write up reports, things like that. But I would have had to go back to school for another degree for that, actually. And so that's that I did make the decision in the end to just go back and do what I was doing before. It really just was on the job, like remembering how to do it.
Yeah.
It really
Yeah.
was.
Well, we're all so glad that you made that decision.
I am too. I am
Yeah.
too.
It was a good choice. What role did community or even mentorship play in your journey back to work, back to the workforce?
Yeah, definitely a couple of women that I was working with at the time that I kept in touch with really helped me. And they had been in the field a little bit longer than me. And it really helped me to figure out, what was my goal? What did I want to
Mm,
do? Did I want to go back and even do that again? They helped me remember what it was like when I was doing it because boy, that in that time you really forget, right? How it was. And yeah, just kind of using them as role models too, because those women also had kids and also had been through some stages, right? Another thing that was really helpful was I joined this mothers group called Mothers and More. And that was a group for mothers in transition. So it wasn't just a group for mothers who were staying at home with their kids. It was a group for mothers who had made some type of change in their professional life because of their kids. So some of them were part-time, some of them stayed home, some of
mhm.
them were full-time. And talking with the women in that group about even though they weren't doing careers necessarily the same as what I was doing or had done, it helped to see other women in that position and how they were dealing with it and what would it look like if I was to jump back in and go full time right now. Here's this person over here who's doing it, telling me how she only has time to do laundry at 11 o'clock at night, right?
Right.
That group was really, really helpful. And not only did that group provide social, opportunities for mothers and their kids, and some dads too, by the way, even though it was called Mothers and More, moms and kids, play groups, all that, kid activities, all that kind of thing. But they also did, if they had speakers come in and talk about how to do a resume, how to get your resume back up to speed, what to put on your resume when you've been home for a few years. They had a lot of speakers that came in and talked about how how do you give attention to your professional life when so much of yourself is wrapped up in your kids. So a group like that really, really can help. And it also gave me the chance to volunteer with that group. So I eventually became, a co-leader of that group, mentored other women who had younger kids, and that gave me the opportunity to kind of keep my head in that space as well. So that's a great thing if people can find a group like that in their area. And I know that Mothers and More at the time was nationwide. I hope that it still is.
I think that is such a testament to our importance for knowing other people's stories and
Uh-huh.
leaning on each other. I've had several other mothers on Coffee Talk, and we've talked about that balance of how to do the things that you need to do as a person if you have career goals, and creating that balance and hearing different people's stories, seeing yourself in those stories and figuring out what your path is going to be. There's
Hmm.
so much community and mentorship, and I love that group. I'm going to do a little bit of research and put that in the show notes if anyone's listening and might need that as a bridge, as a help. A lot of times women that I know they go home with their kids and they get lost in it,
Yeah.
and it
Oh yeah.
becomes all they know. When my son left for the Coast Guard, oh my gosh, almost 6 years ago, and he was my oldest, and when he left, I just kind of looked around and I was like, "What am I supposed to do now?"
Oh yeah.
This was my firstborn, and, we pour our lives into our kids, and it can be the challenge of, "Okay, what's next? How do I get back to where I want to be?" Again, hats off to anyone that decides to stay home with their kids. I would not trade that time with my children for anything, for any career advancement anywhere. Motherhood is the greatest job I've ever had, I'll ever have. But I think what a resource for women to have, and for you for volunteering and sharing your story and what you did and help other women that are coming up. I want to kind of throw back a little bit to your social work. What that is such a that's a big transition. First of all,
Yeah.
social work to IT. Now I understand the reason, the why behind it. How did that background in social work shape the way that you are leading, the way that you are collaborating in your role now in tech?
Um, I think I use those skills all the time. Those are the soft skills, right? And I had a one of my former employer told me, I can teach you the technical skills, but those so-called soft skills are harder to teach. Those are the skills around being supportive and empathetic for people that you lead. It helps you also learn how to be very direct, right? Because in that field, when you're doing counseling or therapy, you're supportive and empathetic, but you also have to you kind of push people sometimes, right? To face things or to do things and confront things, I guess. And so I think you learn how to be that balance of supportive yet a little bit tough when you have to be. And so I think it's huge. It's just huge in being a leader. I think those skills that I learned, just how to communicate, how to talk to people, how to read a room, you learn a lot about that. So I think it's almost essential. Like I almost think it was meant to be that I had that training because it's made me a much better leader, I think, than if I hadn't had it.
I'll say after being a stay-at-home parent essentially for as long as I was, man, the things that we have to juggle, so many things all at once,
Yeah.
especially like conflicting schedules and just all the balance of just the things happening under your own roof. I would hire someone coming back into their career in a second, because
Mhm.
I know that there is time management skills, the soft skills that you're talking about, the listening, the being able to quickly problem solve and
Uh-huh.
pivot, managing multiple needs all at the same time, multiple priorities, deadline, all of those things. That is the real balance of being at home and managing a family. I would hire someone coming back into work in a moment because of, you said, those soft skills. I love this story is so inspiring. I love hearing about how you went back to work and you weren't being given the opportunities that you deserved. And so you went and found them. You have them. You're making that happen for yourself. That mindset, I think, is something that a lot of people need to hear right now, that if you're not happy with where you are, if you're not being given the opportunities you know you need, step out. I use the phrase, get out of your own way and
Yeah.
step out and make that happen for yourself.
Also look for those opportunities, because don't just wait. I think a lot of times we wait for somebody to hand it to us, right? And I think you have to ask. You just have to ask. If you see it and you're in a company and you see this opportunity over here, ask about it. Even if maybe you don't have all the qualifications or the requirements, but why not? If you don't ask, you definitely will never get it.
Yeah.
So reach out and ask, say, hey, I might not quite, fit XYZ, but I've got these other skills over here that I could bring to it. Could I, hey, give me a try, right? I think it's always worth asking. And I've done that, and I've ended up where I want to be. So that's worked out for me. And I've had a lot of no's too, but you eventually might get a yes, and then you end up in a better place.
I think it's important for leadership to ask. I mean, we have year reviews at my company every year, and one of the questions that I ask is, are you on the path that you want to be on? Is this job giving you the opportunities that you want for your next step? Thank you for sharing so much today. Your honesty, that's really, I love hearing that. I love your whole story, but that moment where you said, I'm not getting what I need here, and I know there's more, and you went after it. I love that. You are showing that growth isn't about speed. It's absolutely about intention, and being intentional about the choices that you're making and owning your own path.
The things that I would look back on, I would say, again, don't sit back and wait for somebody to hand you that opportunity. Look for it, go after it, and consider careers that you never thought you would do. Because if anybody had ever told me that I was going to work in IT, I would have laughed at them.
Yeah.
You just never know where you're going to end up. So consider all the possibilities. Don't just think, oh, I'm not good at this one little thing, so I can't do anything that might be somewhat related to that. Consider everything, because there could be opportunity out there that you never thought you would grab onto. Yeah.
Leanne, thank you again. This has been Coffey Talk. I am Kate Coffey Bacon. Thanks for joining us for another real conversation about work, life, and all of the spaces in between. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Kate.
Thank you for joining us today on Coffey Talk. A special thanks to my guests for sharing their story, and to you, the listener, for being a part of this conversation. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe so you never miss a Monday morning chat. Until next time, I'm Kate Coffey Bacon, and this has been Coffey Talk.